Hey there, welcome back. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be resetting the room when we re-enter it. So right now, if we have our enemy follow us and we break some pots and then we leave the room, everything's going to stay in the state it was. But we're going to make it so that if we leave the room and come back in, things go back to how we would expect them to be. Enemies go back to their home positions, and anything that was destroyed that we want to come back will come back. So stick around and let's dive right in. Alright, so I'm actually kind of excited to get into today's stuff because we're going to cover something that I think is really interesting, and as we do that, we're going to make our project a little bit better and build up so that we can have a better camera system than we currently have. I know one of the most frequently asked questions I get is how would you make our camera system work for like an L-shaped room, and we're going to be able to do that very, very soon. So if that's something you've been wanting to do, make these, kind of weird shaped rooms where you can still have the transition, we're getting there. So just hold tight and we'll get there soon. But what we're doing today is one of the things that's going to lay the groundwork for that. We're going to use something called the observer pattern in order to make it so that when we leave a scene and come back into it, anything that we destroyed comes back to life, and when we leave a scene, everything that's in there becomes inactive, so that the game itself doesn't have to worry about what's happening with the stuff in a room that we aren't currently using. So things will only become active when we enter the room, and then everything that's in that room will become active, unless it's something like a chest that shouldn't be active. And when we leave a room, everything that's in there will become inactive, so that we're not using system resources for something that we don't need to. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new empty game object, and this is going to be essentially just like a room template. And so this is game object 1. I'm going to call this room 1, and so this is going to be this room right here. I'm going to reset my transform so that I'm 0, 0, 0 instead of it being some random spot in space, and this is going to represent room 1 right here. So I'm going to add a new component to it. And this component has to be a collider, and it can't be a box collider for something that we're going to be dealing with in the future. Instead, it has to be either a composite collider or a polygon collider. So we're going to use a polygon collider. So if you've never used a polygon collider before, when you make one, and you go to Edit Collider, you get this weird little pentagon. Now, I'm going to set these points roughly where I want them to be at the borders of this room. It's kind of, no, I don't want that, I want this. It's kind of just eyeballing it right now, but we'll make it more specific and accurate in just a moment. Right now I'm essentially just setting these points up so that I can get access to this points value over there, and then once I have access to that, I can set them nicely and in a manner that is exactly what I want them to be. So I need to make this a trigger. I don't know what I just did. Oh yeah, it's not used by composite. So it's a trigger, and this is just a weird thing that I found. I can't access the points right now, but if I click away and then click back, I can. Is the weirdest thing. So I want one path, and I don't want 5, I want 4. And I'm going to set these directly. So I want my first element to be at 15, 0, and my second element to be at 0, 0, my third element to be at 0, negative 20, is it 24 or 25? I'll try negative 24. And then this one is going to be at 25, 24, no, negative 24, sorry. So let's check to make sure that I have these in the right spots. Nope, I super don't. So the 0, 0 one's okay. This one, if I go here, so this one right there, that one's not okay. And that one must be 15, 0. So let's go out of edit, and I'll change this from 15, 0 to 25, 0. Alright, cool. Now if I go back into edit here, these aren't as far down as I want them. I want them farther down. So go out of edit, and this should be negative 25, And this should be negative 25. I should have remembered that my rooms were 25 by 25. I don't know what's wrong with me. So there we go. Fits our room perfectly. You want to make sure that you have the is trigger turned on. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a few different things first here. So first I'm going to make a script. Sorry for that weird cut. So first I'm going to make a script for our rooms. So I'm going to put this in my game stuff folder. So I'm going to create a C# script, and I'm going to call this a room. And then I'm going to open this up, and I'm actually going to create another script that is going to be an overworld room. So I want to have room to be an extendable class that other things can inherit from, because I have overworld rooms and then I have dungeon rooms, and I don't want to pigeonhole one or the other. So I'm going to make, like, I might want to have some things in an overworld room that aren't in a dungeon room, and vice versa. So I'm going to make this overworld room, and then I'm going to delete that new behavior script that got created when I was impatient. So delete that, delete, and then I'm going to make a dungeon room. And we'll be dealing with the dungeon room soon, because we need to talk about those rooms that you have to kill all enemies in order to open the doors. But for now, let's open up room, and let's also, man, my computer is very slow today. Let's also open up overworld room. All right, so room, this is going to inherit from mono behavior, just like it should. Overworld room is going to inherit from room. All right, now, so I want to think about things that both overworld and dungeon rooms will have. So one thing that they'll both have is, okay, sorry about that weird cut there. So one thing that they'll both have is enemies and breakables in general. Now, not every room is going to have enemies and not every room is going to have breakables, but in general, both the overworld rooms and the dungeon rooms will have those. So what I want to do here is I want to make a public enemy array, and I want to call it this, well, I'll just call it enemies. Enemies. Okay, there we go. Okay, now I also want to make a list of breakable things, because when I leave a room and then come back into a room, I want to have all the breakables reinstantiate themselves, or not reinstantiate themselves, make themselves active again. So I'm going to make a public, and for now it's just the pots I have. I opened up the pot script. Yeah, this isn't inheriting from anything, but you might want to have some other breakables. So you might have a main breakable class that pot inherits from. For example, like in Zelda, you could have the pots, but you could have the grass. Those should essentially be in the same family anyway. They should inherit from the same classes. So I'm going to make a public array of pots, and I'm going to call it just pots. Man, IntelliSense is failing me today. All right. Now the main idea that I want to do is when I leave a room, I want to go through all the enemies and all the pots, and I want to make them inactive. And then when I enter a room, I want to go through all the enemies and all the pots and make them active. Now, the reason that you need an observer object for this is I could make it so that I could send a signal, and every enemy or pot that subscribes to that signal could set itself inactive when I leave the room. However, I can't use that signal to have an enemy or an object that's already inactive make itself active. You need an observer object, something that's active always, to make other things active. So since I'm already going to need to do that to make things active, I might as well just have everything be in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an on-trigger enter 2D and an on-trigger exit 2D method. So first, public void on-trigger enter 2D, and like always I'm going to change this to other. So I want to check to make sure that it's the player and that it's not the trigger version of the player. So if other dot compare tag player and not other dot is trigger, Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to activate all of the enemies and I'm going to activate all of the pots. So I'm just going to add a comment here because the way I'm going to do it is a way I haven't done stuff before. So activate all enemies, that's enemies and pots. All right. So the other thing, oh, and I need this to be a virtual void so that I can overwrite it with doors and stuff that the dungeon would have. So now I need to also make a public virtual void on trigger exit 2D. Collider 2D other. And now it's essentially the exact same thing. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it. And instead of being activate, it's going to be deactivate. So deactivate. All right. So what I want to do now is I'm going to make a function that's going to be capable of both activating and deactivating any game object I want it to based on the component. So this is going to be a little void, and I'm going to call it change activation. And this is going to take a component as an argument. All right. Oh, and I need to give the component a name. I'm too used to Python right now. IntelliSense, why do you only work sometimes? All right, cool. So now what I want to do is I want to iterate over all of the components that are going to be in that array. So here, I'm going to make a for int I is 0, I is less than enemies.length I++. And then I'm going to call change activation for that object. So change activation for enemies I. And since enemies I is it's just a component, it's going to be fine. All right, so then down here, the change activation, I'm going to have this also take in a Boolean value for whether it should be on or off, and we'll call this activation. And I'm going to send this in, since this is activating it, I'm going to send this true. So I'm going to say component.gameObject.setActive activation so that I can use that for it. Now I'm going to do the same thing for all the pots. So for and I is 0, I is less than pots.length, I++, and change activation pots I true. All right, cool. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing for the deactivation, so I can just copy these however many lines they are, 6 or so. So I'm going to copy those, and I'm going to paste them here, and then I'm just going to change the activation from true to false. All right, so true to false. Cool. So I'm going to save everything here. Now I'm going to go back to Unity and find my room 1 that I created here. This is going to have my Overworld Room script attached to it. So right now I have this is a previous version I was messing around with. So I've got my Overworld Room script, and if you don't already have it, you can just draw it on there. And this needs to know the enemies and the pots it's going to manage. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a bunch more pots. So I'll just grab one of these pots and I'll duplicate it a few times. And I'm just duplicating it by doing Command D or Control D on Windows. And there we go. So now I've got my pots and stuff. I'm going to make these children of room 1, which is why I put room 1 at 0, 0, 0, so that it's not going to mess with their transforms. So I'll grab all of these, put them in room 1. Oop, inside room 1, not next to it. I'm going to do the same thing with my enemies here. So this one, and this one. These are all going to go inside of room 1. And cool. Now for room 1, it needs to know what enemies it needs to control and what pots it needs to control. So I'm going to lock this on room 1, and then I'll add my little logs to the enemies array. There we go. And I'm going to add my pots to the pots array. There we go. So now what I want to do, I want to check one thing really fast in my enemy script, and that is when the enemy health is, okay. So I'm already setting the object inactive instead of destroying it, which is what I want. And then with the pot, I'm also setting that inactive. All right, great. So if I'm destroying it, I would need to change this to be inactive so that my room script can then reactivate it instead of destroying it. Because if I destroy it, the room's going to have to reinstantiate it. All right, so I'm going to hit play here. And I'm going to start by destroying all my pots, making the enemies move around, and then we'll check to see. So all my pots are destroyed, and let's make the enemies move a bit, just so you can see that they're there. Just one of them is fine. And now I'm going to exit the room, and now I want to jump over to look at the scene view here. And you'll notice that all the enemies are inactive. And if I take a look at my, where is it? I just made it. My room 1 object. There we go. And you see that everything that's part of it is inactive. So now, if I go back to my game and I go back in, all my pots are back, and so are all the enemies. Now the other thing I'd want to do though is, if you'll notice, I'm going to make this enemy go someplace. There we go. So now if I leave and come back, the enemy is still in that weird position. So I don't want it to do that. I want it to go back to a home position. So I'm going to save this really fast. I'm going to exit play mode first. I'm going to save my scene, and then I'm going to go to my enemy scene. And I already made a. Did I? Or did I put that in log? All right. So I'm going to make a reference to a kind of like a home position that I want the enemy to go back to. So this is going to be a public transform, and I'll call this home. Actually, let's not even do it as a transform. Let's do it as a vector 2. So vector 2, home position. And then in the start method, actually we can do this in awake. I want to set its position to be that home position. So transform.position is equal to home position. All right, cool. Now, if I jump back into Unity here, I'm going to look at my my logs on their own. So first I've got, as soon as it's done compiling. So first I've got log 1, and log 1 has a position. Is that 0, 0? Seriously? Oh, I'm still in the room. I forgot to go out of lock mode. Okay, so I'm going to make these kind of nice values. So I'm going to put this at 22 and at -9. And then down here in my home position, I'm going to do 22, -9. And then this other log, I'm going to put this at 19, -9. And then I'll change that down here, 19, -9. And then the last one, this one, I'll put this at 20, -15. And then I'll change that in its home position as well. So, there it is. 20, -15. Alright, so I'm going to save everything now. And I'm going to hit play. Alright. The same field name. Oh, okay. So I'm using home position more than once in the inherited classes, so I'll have to fix that. I'll do that in just a second. So I move that log, I'm destroying all of these things. If I exit, come back, haha. So that's an issue. So let's fix these two things here first. So first, I'm going to open up the log script so that I can fix this red error I've got down there. So in log, I'm going to get rid of home position because I'm now putting that as part of the base class. So that's going to get rid of the red error. And then I'm also going to go to enemy here, and instead of doing this transform.position is the home position there, I'm going to cut it from there, and I'm going to put it in on enable. So this is going to be void on enable, and then I'll just paste that line that I had. So I'm going to save everything here. Let's pop back into Unity and let's try this again. So if I hit play, all right. As soon as everything is done compiling here. All right, cool. So I'm going to get log to move. Come on. There we go. I'm going to destroy my pots. I'm still getting that error. What is that from? Base turret. Oh, it's the turret, the area enemy. I see. I got to do it for all the other inherited classes I made from log. All right. So now if I leave and come back, that log is now back to its home position. All right, so let me fix my other enemies here really quickly. So I've got my area enemy. I actually should have fixed it since this is inheriting from log, and I got rid of the, that's weird. And then my turret enemy. That's weird, I shouldn't be getting that error, I don't think. Let's clear this. Let's try it again and see if that error still appears. Okay, there we go. Yep, this time it's okay. All right, so now the whole reason that we did this is because now we have this one actual definition for what is this room. So I can take everything that's inside the room and make it part of this, and then that way my hierarchy is simpler. I have just, room 1, room 2, room 3, however I want to organize them. I can also use this to make each of these enemies, area enemies now, and have their bounding box be this collider that's attached to this room so that they don't leave this area. I could also instead make a smaller area inside this room that I don't want them to leave. This is also going to be helpful, and this is why we had to use a polygon collider for when we change our camera to the Cinemachine camera. We'll be able to use this as the bounding box for the camera, and then that way you'll be able to make, different shaped rooms, L shapes and whatever, and your polygon collider is going to keep the camera within that boundary. And that will actually be really good because that'll be it'll stay inside that boundary no matter what your resolution is at, no matter what your aspect ratio is at. So yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments down below. Otherwise, you can follow me on Twitter to find out when I post new videos. You can join my Discord. Lots of really excellent people there trying out different things with this project. So if you want to see how other people could do things, feel free to check that out. And yeah, I hope everybody out there has themselves a wonderful day. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving a like, subscribing to the channel, or telling a friend who might be interested. Also, please consider following me on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can earn access to tangible rewards, like early access to videos, backer-only videos and series, polls for future topics, streams, and even individual tutoring sessions. You can find a link to that in the description. And as always, have yourselves a wonderful day.